Hello there, I'm Katherine Hannah. This is our Huddersfield Town preview. Huddersfield taking on Rotherham at the John Smith Stadium this weekend. We'll be on the air a little bit earlier, so don't miss the start, around about 1:40. All because of the FA Cup. Make sure you join us, though, about 1:40ish, DAB digital radio. So be there a little bit earlier than usual. Extra work for me and for our Huddersfield Town commentator, Paul Ogden, but there is lots to talk about, as always. Let's start with the team news. Still no Nahki Wells. Joel Lynch back in training, but unlikely to feature, we think. Robinson a doubt. So maybe some shaking up of the team, or is he going to have to make the best of what he's got?
There might have been some shaking up anyway after what we've seen in the last two performances, Katherine. In fact, a lot of fans would really like to see that because the team looks a little tired mentally, to say the least, in some quarters. One or two players have maybe been given a slightly too long a run in the team. The other thing is, of course, and I mean this kindly, do we believe Chris Powell when he says for definite that Nahki Wells is going to be out? I mean, I'm sure he'll be telling us the truth as much as he can, but sometimes he does come up with a mysterious insertion of a player in the hours ahead of kickoff. So I always keep an extremely open mind about team selection now, apart from what we definitely know. And my expectations are pretty wide as well now, because from an excellent, efficient 3-0 at home to Reading, the team has plummeted again in its standards, defensively in particular, and they have been badly bruised and beaten in the last two games. So the one thing I would say is that if Jack Robinson, for example, is out, then Jake Carroll showed signs to me that he is a lot more up to the job than he used to be, although he struggled at the beginning against Brentford. We saw it, didn't we? He recovered. It may be that Connor Cody is due a return, and there are other parts of the team that you could tweak anyway. So I think Town need to start from scratch a little bit. There are 11 games left, and there are still plenty of opportunities to raise standards again.
The big talking point this week, as well as the number of goals that have been conceded, which is a little bit frightening, is still this lack of new faces. After the post-match against Brentford, Chris Powell said to you, I could stand here and say I need 5 or 6 new players, but that's not going to happen. Do you get the sense that the board, as it stands, expect Chris Powell to continue managing the team with the squad he has available, even if that means utilising the young players and the development squad?
Absolutely, I do. And I think that's the whole point about Chris Powell's whole tenure, Katherine. I think he's had 30 championship matches now. And one thing that was perhaps under-publicised when he first arrived in September is that he was expected to motivate the existing squad, maybe make a couple of additions, which is all he's been allowed to do. But he was never really guided along any different lines than that. The whole problem with Mark Robins, if that's the way to put it, being that it appeared Mark Robins couldn't get any more out of the players than had been the case at the end of last season. And that's why they agreed by mutual consent to allow him to leave. Chris Powell was known for his man management skills before he arrived. And the fundamental point about Chris Powell's arrival was that he was expected to work with what he had. Yes, he was allowed to bring in Diego Poyet and Ishmael Miller, but only once certain standards have been achieved. And I think what he meant when he said to us down our microphones, I could say that I wanted 5 or 6. I think what he really means is that if he was allowed his way, and any manager worth their salt would probably need 4 or 5 additions to the squad now at least. So it's a difficult job. It's a difficult squad because I think its maximum standard is probably lower than it should be in the Championship.
The opponents are Rotherham, fighting for survival. We remember, bitterly, the sucker punch that they dealt to Town on Boxing Day at the New York Stadium. Where do you think their main threat will come from, bearing in mind Danny Ward can play, Adam Hamill can't?
Correct.
But why might Rotherham be dangerous for you?
Well, they've got something of a motivator in charge, Steve Evans, although he's got his own style. And they have got quite a lot of faces who are fairly new. They've even got a debutant tomorrow, Lafferty, although he's a left-back from Burnley. They picked up an important new player this week. And I would say that Rotherham will be in survival mode. They'll be in trench mode, making sure that they keep their championship-level wages by staying in the Championship. There's a little bit of a cushion between themselves and the bottom 3, but not much, and it's under threat. Particularly from Wigan, who won again the other night. So I don't think Rotherham will relax at all. Danny Ward is the sort of lad who might think he had a point to prove against Huddersfield Town, who rather discarded him. And he scored recently for Rotherham. So, psychologically, they won't be short of motivation, but I think it'll be a simple trench mentality that they bring to Huddersfield Town. And what they shouldn't lose sight of is their own fans. They'll have a very big travelling contingent, and Rotherham will make it a derby atmosphere, and I'm looking forward to that.
It will be lively, I'm sure. Join us from around 1:40. DAB Digital Radio, the place to be. Dedicated Huddersfield Town builder with me, with Oggy, former Town midfielder Kieran O'Regan as well. Ahead of kick-off, you'll hear a lot more from Chris Powell talking about the squad and the situation with any new faces. Hear from Harry Bunn as well. A look back to 2006 and a day when Andy Booth stole the show. Listen out for that. That's followed by full commentary of Huddersfield Town against Rotherham. Don't forget you can get in touch with us right throughout the show. Your score predictions, your thoughts on the team selection, post-match reaction as well if you need to vent. Bit of therapy. 81333 for text messages. Start those with WYS. You can tweet at WYS Daily, but you won't miss a thing. Huddersfield Town against Rotherham, West Yorkshire Sport on BBC Radio Leeds, Saturday at 1:40.